everyone, and welcome back to Famous Pages. Today we're talking about the sonnet On the Sea by John Keats. First we're going to start with a summary and a little bit of context and then move straight into the line-by-line analysis. In 1817, the poet John Keats traveled to the island of Wight, to Carisbrooke, and he was on holiday, and while there, the first morning, he decided to arrange some of his books, some of his prints, and after he found himself somewhat exhausted by this affair, and he sat down to reread some little bits and pieces, and particularly he read a passage of Shakespeare's King Lear that goes, "Do you not hear the sea?" And reading this, he found that it has haunted me intensely. This is a direct quote that he wrote in a letter to his friend and fellow poet, John Reynolds. With that, he attached the sonnet On the Sea. On the Sea being a sonnet, it has the traditional form of 14 lines and a meter, the iambic pentameter. So here the iambic pentameter is particularly apt as that steadiness of the unstressed and unstressed, the didum part, mirrors very much the flow of the tides as they come into the shore and they come out of the shore and they come in and they come out, and that steady, constant going on and on and on that is characteristic to this hum of the sea as we like to think of it. Also, this dum-de-dum very much mirrors the beating of the human heart, which is apt because here we have a very romantic capital R theme, which is the insignificance of humanity compared to nature. We talk here about how humans' eyes get tired and their ears get tired from the noise of everyday life, and really the only thing that can recharge them is this great, vast essence, vast being that is the sea. So they turn to the sea, and so we have that contrast between the person and nature. And the Romantics very much valued nature. They believed that it was one of the greatest things, the greatest forces to be admired, to be revered, and humanity was just, well, nothing compared to this greatness of nature. And in particular, a lot of Romantics were actually pantheist, which is that they believed that God can manifest in everything, in people, in things, in animals. So just keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk about it more when we get to the analysis. One thing that deviates more from the traditional form of the sonnet is actually the rhyming scheme, because the poem at first follows A-B-B-A, A-B-B-A, but then it switches to C-D-E, D-E-C, which might actually be Keats's way to indicate that there is a volta here and a shift in ideas, because we do shift from that contrast of describing the sea and this beautiful imagery with the third person narration addressing to no one in particular, to addressing you the listener, or you the reader if you're reading this poem. And it's instead highlighting just how our facilities can be fed by the ocean, and it's at once a reminder of how great the ocean is, but there's also something very melancholic in it, in that it points out that we humans are somewhat out of place and somewhat lost, and the only place where we can truly be ourselves and our best selves and our healthiest selves is amongst nature, which we have turned away from, and we're moving far from it when it should be the opposite. So with that, let's dive straight into the analysis. It keeps eternal whisperings around desolate shores, and with its mighty swell gluts twice 10,000 caverns, till the spell of Hecate leaves them their old shadowy sound. So the poem is titled On the Sea, and the very first word that we have here is the third person neutral pronoun it. So no need to say the sea again. The sea consumes the entirety of the poem. From the title, straight away we go straight onto the characteristics of the sea. No need for any other words, no need for any other descriptions. The sea. The sea which keeps with eternal whisperings around the shores. Lonely, faraway lands. There's also an implication that maybe we will never touch, because desolate, there's that sense of isolation, there's that sense of loneliness. But why are they desolate? Why are they alone? Well, it's because we haven't cultivated them, we haven't explored them, we haven't set foot upon them. They exist somewhere unexplored on this massive earth, and the only thing, or the only person that can see them, that can keep them, is the sea. Because we can't keep every single land that we see. We can't possess it, we can't be around it, we can't be everywhere, but the sea can. The whisperings are described as eternal, as in beyond time, timeless, something inherently ancient, right? So whereas we are something recent, these are whisperings that are eternal. They might hold some secret that we as humans don't know, so they whisper, and we can't understand because we will never understand because we're too young, or we're too silly, or we're too inexperienced, because these are eternal, something that will last forever, whereas we live for only a temporary time on this earth. And also, notice how all of this is personification, that the sea keeps the whisperings, or that the waves are whispering when this is something that humans can do. But it's an ironic kind of personification, because it's saying that the sea and the waves are a person, but at the same time, they could never be a person because they would not be able to be contained in our poor vessels. So we as humans can't do all these things. This is impossible for us, but not for the sea, not for nature. Again, we have this glory of nature when we get to mighty swell. So we go from this like gentle whispering to mighty swell, just as we wrap our head as the reader around this idea of personification and look how that compares to us humans. We also see exactly why the ocean can't be contained, because it's not just about gentle whispering, it's about this powerful tide that may glut, that may flood thousands of caverns, more than 20,000 caverns. It's uncontrollable, it's indescribable, it will flood the caves. And glut is suggestive of gluttony, so it's insatiable. It will never feed its appetite upon these caves, and it will keep on flooding them until Hecate pulls them back. Hecate, the goddess of moonlight, the moon essentially. So until the moon pulls back the tides. And it's a very complex idea, this, especially for Keats's time, that the moon, with its gravity, that it controls the tides, that it pulls them back and forth. And he says that essentially the sea can become something so strong and so powerful that it can end thousands of caverns, and it will keep on doing so until the moon, until some other powerful entity, until some other powerful being takes the reins and says, "Hey, you need to pull out." And also, in some versions, interestingly, the word caverns is capitalized, so that would suggest that it's not like caverns like just the small caves, but it's this idea of caverns, that maybe it's some rocky coastal shore everywhere all at once, that the sea again is everywhere, that idea of vastness, and also that idea that a cavern can also be a home for various sea creatures. It can be like a little habitat, like a little safe haven away from the bustle of the shore. And it kind of suggests that, look, even the caverns are not safe. So we as humans can so easily be destroyed by this powerful sea that lives next to us, but by its benevolence we keep on living in harmony with it. Often 'tis in such gentle temper found, that scarcely will the very smallest shell be moved for days from whence it sometime fell, when last the winds of heaven were unbound. Then go back to the idea of gentleness. Notice how the first idea was one of gentleness, and only then did we talk about these powerful mighty swell of the tides. So we go from gentleness to roughness to gentleness again. It's that backwards and forwards movement so characteristic of the waves. And so here we turn to that idea that sometimes the sea is so gentle that it won't even touch the smallest, tiniest seashell, that it'll pass so gently over the sand that even the tiniest shell will be able to remain unmoved in the sand without the sea moving it with its movement. The shell that, back again to the reminder of the power of the sea, the shell that got there because previously the ocean was raging and flying because of heaven and the winds unbound, and the winds that were so strong that caused the ocean, the waves to rise, and threw that shell up on the ground. So again, we go from gentle to rough, to gentle to rough. And the small shell possibly represents, just in general, like small creatures. And we have that idea that, you know, it's the shell that can find its peace from even the largest of the forces. But it's also that idea that even the sea is controlled by something else, not just by the moon, but by the winds, by the forces of heaven unbound. So when the wind, and when God let loose the wind, that's when it became unbound. That's when it caused the sea to overflow and it threw that shell up. And if we're going back to that idea of pantheism, essentially it's saying that because God is present in every small, like everything, in every small thing and in every large thing, it's saying that that shell is, well, everything has its master, that ultimate master up there, but also that God can decide when the shell can have its most difficult, most rough days, but also when it will have its peace. So it's kind of very suggestive of what our human lives are like, when sometimes we're in turmoil because of some other external forces, and then other times even the most powerful object can't move us because we have been granted some inner peace or the permission to rest and recover from above. And this is also the exact point where we have that idea and that shift, the volta, and we have a caesura from after fell and the heavens unbound. So that kind of makes us pause and consider the last time that things were difficult for us. So not just for this poor seashell, but the last time when there was such a rough wind and storm that threw us up and left us stranded somewhere. And that is when we turn to address the listener. O ye who have your eyeballs vexed and tired, feast them upon the wideness of the sea. O ye whose ears are dimmed with uproar rude, or fed too much with cloying melody, sit ye near some old cavern's mouth and brood until ye start as if the sea nymphs quired. So, oh you, oh ye, the archaic form of you. This exclamation mark draws our attention to us. It's telling us that we're now in that rough position where our eyeballs may be vexed and tired. So our eyes may be tired from watching the small things, and now we should turn them and we should feast them upon the sea. We should allow them to relax by taking in the wideness, just how big the sea is. Our eyes may be tired from looking at the small insignificant things that we humans occupy ourselves with, and the only recipe, the only way to treat that, to feed that hunger, to nourish our eyeballs, is to feed them, is to give them that nourishment from the sea, the widest, the most vast, like, entity that we can imagine. And the fact that the sea is capitalized again emphasizes that it's not just like a specific sea, it's the sea in general. The sea as a massive, massive being that we can turn to. And notice how we keep coming back to that semantic field of food, and how there are recurring themes and motifs that we come back to that surface again and again, almost like the waves and like the shore. So Keats really toys with the form of the poem to make it represent the subject, which is the ocean or the sea. Oh ye, again we have the repetition. Again Keats calls on our attention, and this time he says that our ears are dinned. So our ears can hear the din, the hum of daily noise. We have been fed with the wrong kind of food. We're too full because it's a cloying melody. Cloying is like typically an adjective we use for something that's too sweet. So it's again, he's playing with that idea that maybe what we hear in everyday life, the things that we say, even the songs that we play, of course, they're nothing compared to this song of the ocean. It's too sweet, it's too false, and we're eating the wrong kind of food. Really, the only way to satisfy our hunger is to turn to the sea. Sit near a cavern, he then says. So when you're feeling this way, when your ears are tired from the world, when your eyes are tired from the world, go to those caverns. Yes, those very same caverns that can easily flood, and just brood. So of course you're depressed, so you need that time to sit there in melancholy and reflection until suddenly you're cured. Until you start, like if the sea nymphs sang a song, sang a choir, just as suddenly as you would like jolt and be like, what's going on? If you heard the sea nymphs sing their beautiful songs, just so suddenly will you be cured by your very exposure to the sea, by listening to the noise of the sea, the correct sound, rather than this everyday chatter and unnecessary noise. Just like that will your eyes be cured and well rested, and they won't be so tired because they will perceive the vastness of the sea rather than the small insignificant things we as humans focus on. And of course we have the phrase cavern's mouth, and again mouth from that semantic field. So we had all these words like gluttony and like, you know, food and hunger, and now we have this feast and this idea that here is the concrete food that you can bring to your mouth. So we now go from this abstract idea of food to the very real action of bringing it all into your mouth. So of being satisfied. So you had this hunger, this craving that would never stop from the entire duration of the poem from start, and now when we get to finish, we finally get to satisfy that hunger, and that's the idea coming full circle and wrapping it all up. With that ends the sonnet on the sea by Keats. I hope you enjoyed this analysis and found it helpful. Thank you so much for making it so far. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.